Matthew Tkachuk has been named an alternate captain for Team USA ahead of the Four Nations face-off.
You're Locked On Panthers, your daily podcast on the Florida Panthers. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And welcome into this Friday, January 31st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. Thank you for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. I'm Armando Velez. You can follow me on X and Blue Sky at MondoMan12. Follow the show account on X and Instagram at LO_FLA Panthers and on Blue Sky at LOFLA Panthers. You can follow the show account anywhere you listen to podcasts and on YouTube. And if you're watching the show on the YouTube, make sure to press that like button. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONAHL for $20 off your first purchase. You can do that all on Game Time. So, Florida Panther fans, grateful to be back here once again on the show where we're going to discuss a little bit more of Four Nations, the future of international hockey for the NHL and beyond. We're going to discuss Adam Boqvist being placed on waivers, what that means for the Florida Panthers, and we're going to discuss the back-to-back between the Florida Panthers and the Chicago Blackhawks, and along with the New York Islanders this weekend. And to do that all on today's edition of the show, it is a Friday, which means it is a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. Nich Fairbanks is back here. Nich, not only welcome back to the show, but tell the crowd, tell the listeners who might not be watching this on YouTube what you have on currently.
So currently I have a custom made, only 10 jerseys were made from Jerseys 305. They used Panthers Historians logo. I don't know if we can see that on the camera there, with Matthew Tkachuk on the back. Beautiful jersey, honestly. I would love this for, maybe, just some kind of like weird night that the Panthers want to have and celebrate, South Florida, things like that. Because this to me is like kind of like the Miami Vice that the Panthers could take on and everything. But this is more or less the Matthew Tkachuk celebration. I know he didn't get the captaincy, but considering what Austin Matthews was brought in as, he deserves captain, and Matthew is just there to support. And let's go red, white, and blue. Yeah,
yes, sir, for sure. The Panthers, and shout out to our friend Francisco Porta, Florida Panthers historian. The colors for the Vice, a little bit of the Miami Heat kind of lettering for them as well, along with their former roommates in the Florida Panthers from their days in the Miami arena. So that Miami Vice logo still stands strong in 2025, especially because the Heat are still using the Vice jerseys, which is still a thing of beauty. But let's discuss Matthew Tkachuk being named the alternate captain for Team USA. So Austin Matthews named the captain. Matthew Tkachuk named an alternate captain along with Charlie McAvoy, which was a little bit of a surprise for me for that one. But it's funny because Jacob Langsam of Panther Prairie actually tweeted, this one I didn't know, that Charlie McAvoy is actually Mike Sullivan's son-in-law. So that one was a little bit of news to me on that front. But it's funny because Quinn Hughes, captain of the Vancouver Canucks, wasn't even part of the leadership for the Team USA for them. So I was a little bit surprised of that when I heard the news. How about you?
Just a little bit, because Hughes has definitely become one of, I would probably say, the top 5 defensemen in the league right now. Without him, Vancouver is not looking very good, and especially with the drama they have going on right now, we're not going to talk about it, but one season up and one season mediocre down. But Charlie McAvoy, it's very interesting. I will honestly say this: I'm not a huge fan. Obviously, as a Panther fan, Boston Bruins rivalry, but I think the way that the United States wanted to do it was, you have your star forward in Austin Matthews that everybody knows around the league. You got Matthew Tkachuk, who everybody definitely knows who he is around the league. They know his brother as well. But I also think they wanted somebody else on the back end, somebody who has a little bit more defensive pause to his game. So it really shows kind of like more of a grit. I don't see he was having that. He's more of a fluid skater and moving the puck, whereas McAvoy could probably play both of that, but also play with an edge. So it's really kind of like, to me, a symbolism of maybe what the USA stands for.
Yeah, and also the fact that all three of them have experience with playing in a World Junior team together for them. So that's also a little bit of a connection there from Charlie McAvoy and Matthew Tkachuk, along with Austin Matthews for them there, all in the same draft class too for all three.
Good draft.
Yeah, really great draft. 2015 and 2016 back-to-back drafts of just outstanding picks for all of them. But let's discuss more about the future of international hockey for the NHL and beyond. So we are not only excited for Four Nations, but the fact that the NHL is going to be back in the Olympics next year for the first time since 2014. But there's also been there's also news about the World Cup of Hockey and what the NHL is doing as far as plans in the future. So the NHL is no longer, for a future World Cup of Hockey, is not going to involve the IIHF for involvement of teams for future World Cup of Hockey. So the last two World Cup of Hockey's 2016, and then before that 2004. So you're thinking 12 years in between then. Between both of them, and then you see Four Nations that's going on in the middle of the season currently for the NHL. Number one, this also gets Russia involved for the World Cup of Hockey, and I'm not going to pretend like I know Russian politics, so that's not the direction I want to go here. So this gives Russian players an opportunity to compete. I mean, I doubt we see Sergei Bobrovsky in 2028 and compete. But or Alexander Ovechkin, depending on how long he wants his career. But we could see superstars like an Igor Shesterkin, Kirill Kaprizov in it as well. But also, I want to ask you, because the WBC, the World Baseball Classic, has theirs in the before the season. FIFA World Cup is during the off season, unless you're in the MLS for American soccer. Do you think that this is the placement of an international tournament should be placed mid-season, or it should be before the season? What's your thoughts on that?
I have two ideas on this. Number one, if it replaces the All-Star game altogether, I'm for it. I mean, I had a good time when South Florida, or at least Fort Lauderdale, hosted it. It was definitely a different take on it. I mean, the players got to play golf with hockey sticks and everything, and then they got to shoot pucks onto surfboards to knock their buddy in the dunk tank. Just a different spin on it, but how many times are you going to try and replicate or try to gain excitement on something that a lot of people don't really care about? The players obviously don't, unfortunately. When we were there, you could just tell that McDavid wasn't trying to put on his best performance. I think he wasn't trying to get hurt. Makar actually went, when he was doing the fastest skater, actually went in off the boards. He lost his edge and went into the boards of that. So it's kind of like, why are we doing this? So that's one part of it. If it's going to replace All-Star game, I'm completely for it. The other part of it is you have to think about health and the exhaustion of players. And I'm going to be selfish with the Panthers here. They've played a lot of games the last 2 years, and they have 8 players going, 8 players that they depend on night in and night out that do not get a break. So what is this going to mean for them down the stretch? Are they going to stay healthy? Are they going to give them nights off later in the season? But at the same time, it comes down to, I want to win this for my countrymen, and I want to represent my country and everything. So there's also that feeling to it. So I can see it on both sides. If I were to lean one way, definitely in the off season.
Yeah, and I think of it like this, because obviously hockey is a contact sport. So you're thinking if you get an injury in the World Cup of Hockey prior to the season starting, you have a little bit of time to recover, depending on what the injury is. So that's another thing for it, and it also creates a buzz prior to the season. So it's like getting you ready. So it's not taking you out of the groove. And also the players who are not going, they're not, there's nothing like game reps for the players who are not going to be in the tournament. So that's another thing of why it's so beneficial for it to be in the beginning of the season. So that's why for me, I lean towards more of that. But at the same time, the All-Star game, it's for just like an outdoor game, it's for the people there. And it's funny because during the All-Star game, there was one activity for like the accuracy contest where there's a bit of me that was a little bit distracted during it because I was watching Vladimir Tarasenko playing around with his son on the other side of the rink. This was when he was with the St. Louis Blues. So that was a little bit of it's funny because to think that he ended up getting traded and winning a cup here. So that was another thing that I saw a little bit of that connection. And also it was still cool in South Florida when we saw that Crosby and Ovechkin connection where he said after, I'm going to buy him I'll buy him a beer after after their careers are over.
I mean, it just seems like South Florida or the beach just brings out the best in hockey players. It's just, they want to relax. They want to have a good time and everything. And, if they want to go to the elbow room and, take a edge off, they're more than welcome to do that. But, it was almost as if like Sunrise, Florida had never existed, before the Panthers became relevant. And now people are really starting to see like, hey, it's really laid back here. It's good weather all year round. I mean, 6 months out of the year, you got to worry about those cyclones that want to come by and give us a scare. But other than that, I mean, it's just it's perfect here. But again, you got to think about the health of these players and what they want to do. And I guess we'll see what happens. Hopefully Team USA comes out on top, but don't be surprised if one of if Finland is going to be in the final.
Yeah, and also I feel like the NHL will try to get their cake and eat it too with having both of them, just because they profit. That's really why I would think a World Cup of Hockey would be prior to the season. So, and continuing that from the prior to tournaments there. If they do decide to go the direction of that again after the Olympics, which we're looking at 2028. But we're going to transition over to segment number 2, where we're going to discuss Adam Boqvist being placed on waivers for the Florida Panthers, and we're going to discuss what this means next for the Cats here. We're going to discuss that more next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Today's episode is brought to you by Game Time. And Game Time has a new feature called Game Time Picks that makes getting tickets for events even easier. It filters out the fluff to show you the only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I recently used the Game Time Picks to find tickets for an upcoming NHL game. The browsing through the deals was simple, and I found a great value on all kinds of seats around the venue. The app features great seat views before you can buy, the all-in pricing with no surprise fees at checkout. Make the experience smooth and reliable. Plus, the on-time ticket delivery and lowest price guarantee gave me the peace of mind. Take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Time. Download the app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONNHL for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Lowest price guaranteed. Segment number 2 here on this Friday, January 31st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Friday, a Fairbanks Friday edition of the show. So, Nick, Adam Boqvist has been placed on waivers by the Florida Panthers. We will find out by 2 p.m. if he does clear. So 18 games, 6 points, -4 for him. We mostly saw him as a power play specialist or the third pair on the third pair. So it was we knew what his role was when he was in. And we saw that even when Aaron Ekblad was out, that Toby Bjornfot was up on the depth chart for him, taking up the minutes. So it didn't even matter if Boqvist was a right-handed shot for him. So a little bit of a one-dimensional skater for him, and sometimes a hard time battling in the net front for him. But number one, I want to get your thoughts on him being placed on waivers. And number two, do you think that this means that either Bjornfot gets called up, or B, Bill Zito might be up to something in regarding a move?
So I don't think it's a surprise that he's put on waivers. If you listen to the Cats and Rats podcast, with Kirby and Nick and Cody, they had been talking about this for the last month or two. Like, hey, listen, he's not playing. what's the point of having him on here? He's a power play specialist, and the power play is doing just fine without him.
Yeah.
Ekblad is running it. Schmidt is running it at some point. Even Belinskin's got a shot. So where's the relevancy, and what is he providing for the team? So unfortunately for Adam, it's just, he ran out of options and just, got beat out. And the fact that Maurice, wanted Bjornfot, to play in multiple games just shows that number one, he prefers defensemen that can play all three zones and not just the offensive zone. Somebody who can actually battle down low and actually win battles, which it did take him a game or two to get used to that. Because listen, the NHL is much different from the AHL, so the game intensity and game speed. So the fact that he was able to come in and establish himself, he was just fine. Don't know why that thumbs up came up, but anyways, I just think that Toby did make him, unfortunately, irrelevant to the roster. But to answer your question, do I think Zito's up to something? I think there might be a player that was just had his contract terminated by agreement of both the player and the team. Who might that be?
Brandon Saad? Possibly. There is rumors that he could be signing with the Edmonton Oilers, so that is the rumored destination for Brandon Saad, which I remember talking about this with Frank Rikas. It's crazy. Mm-hmm. 3 years ago, the comparison that he made to Brandon Saad was Mason Marchment at the time.
And who would I want if he did decide to sign with Florida? Who would he be best paired with right now? Who played with Marchment?
Anton Lundell.
Lundell and Reinhart. So I think Lundell is still missing a winger. I love Losterainen and everything, but I think him, Boqvist, and Saad would be a solid third line, one of the best in the league, because they can all grind. JBBQ, which I call him, he's got the speed. He can win battles and everything. And I just think that line would provide even more staunch defense that the Panthers want to play, and they want to play heavy as the season goes on. So that's one option. The other option is maybe Zito's looking to move on the D front, which would actually shore up a lot of deficiencies that we've seen this season.
Yeah, and hey, you can never have enough of experience for him winning all those cups with the Chicago Blackhawks for Brandon Saad there. But also, I want to also turn this conversation into a little bit of what GMs might be thinking around the league. So Pierre LeBrun of The Athletic also decided to ask around GMs about their thoughts about just what the motivation is for GMs around the league now, seeing the first domino fall in Mikko Rantanen, and one of the players that one of the GMs that spoke to him was Bill Zito, and this is what he said: "Quote: We spent the entire offseason on it. You look at your assets, you look at your standings, you look at your projections, you have your plan, and my plan is to put together the best possible team we can. I can't get a better team now than I can a week ago, right? So I just don't think keeping up with the Joneses is part of the equation for teams. We'll always do our best to get any players and pursue any situation what gives us the best chance to win. But I think it changes because everyone else is doing it. It's the same." Close quote. I mean, we've seen the different sides of Zito. We've seen the going all in, we've seen the no moves, and we've seen the minor moves. You could argue that the 2022 deadline for Zito was basically two deadlines in one. So he was making it up for the very next year of not doing anything at all. But also, hey, he bet on his team, and it worked. It worked with getting to the final. So that's a really damn good bet from Zito. So I trust Zito that he's not going to be extremely reactive based on this move for him.
No, and the quote that you just had, until he said what he said at the end, I was just like, oh, he's just giving LeBrun a lot of fluff.
Yeah, that's
he's not gonna tip his hand. He's not gonna let him know what's going on. But we, as Panther faithful and fans, watch. We know what the deficiencies are with this team right now. They're not consistent right now. They're win one, lose two, win one, or maybe two or three. But basically it comes down to, are the stars stepping up? Are they exhausted? Are they tired? Do they need another forward to come in to kind of help take the weight off of them, or do they need to focus on the defense because Spencer Knight and Bobrovsky have actually played okay this season enough to actually keep them in games? So what is the disconnect there? Is it the defense just giving up bad chances and not clearing the puck, or is it the tired forwards? So it really just depends on what lens you want to look at, and I'm actually kind of excited to see what Zito's got up his sleeve over the next couple weeks.
Yeah, and with Boqvist being placed on waivers, that would put their deadline cap space at just under $3 million, which is still not a lot to play with for them. They're just gonna have to continue to just be creative for them. And hey, the fact that the Panthers have improved their play around the net front, and also the fact that they're not giving up the rush chances against like they were, because we've seen it feels like every time you saw a rush chance at the beginning of the season, it felt like 10 out of 10 times they were going in, but those have been limited. And also you have seen the goaltenders just be squared to the puck, get into the butterfly on time, use the reverse VH for them to stop pucks. So that they've given themselves chances to win. It's just been untimely scoring, and we've seen multiple scoring droughts break throughout these last few weeks. So it's really about I think they're close to just an offensive explosion for them. I mean, hey, we saw it in San Jose, but how can we see it against other teams for them? So we will see. So that's gonna be interesting to monitor what, and we'll update it on the YouTube channel and also on the socials based on the Panthers and just having 21 players if they do decide to go the Bjornfot route. So I'm leaning more likely there for now for the Panthers. But we're going to transition over to segment number 3, where we are going to discuss the back-to-back that's coming this weekend for the Florida Panthers against the Chicago Blackhawks and the New York Islanders, that they will pay a visit to the Panthers in Sunrise. We're going to discuss that next here on the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Segment number 3 here on this Friday, January 31st edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day here on a Friday. All right, back-to-back between the Florida Panthers and the Chicago Blackhawks, along with the New York Islanders. 1 p.m. on ABC. Bob Wischusen, Ryan Callahan, and Leah Hextall will be on the call. We love Bob Wischusen here on the show. Just the passion and that he brings to every single broadcast for him. So Chicago 2-5-3 in their last 10. They just lost tonight recently to Carolina, which Connor Bedard had an insane goal against Jonas Johansson the other day when they visited Tampa. So weird road trip. Florida, outside of Florida, back to Florida for them. But the Hawks recently traded Taylor Hall as part of the Rantanen deal, so no more retention slots for them. It's funny because Puck Empire, which is an Instagram page that I highly recommend every hockey fan to follow if you're on it. It posts news of the day in their 10 photos and see who's in on certain players. And they say the Panthers could be in on Seth Jones, and I'm like, wait, what? That's a little bit of a question mark. So I would think if they do go that route, it's more of an off season, not in season for them. So that was a little bit of a head scratcher when I saw that. But a struggling Hawks team, the Panthers, they have gotten their wins against Chicago, but at home, not on the road. So great opportunity for the Panthers to get a win on Saturday, which they should. As far as on paper, but you got to play the games here for this one. So how are you seeing this matchup for the Panthers here on Saturday afternoon?
The tale of two teams this season. Are you going to see the team that's inconsistent and can't really work the neutral zone and play defense? Or are you going to have the team that we saw against the LA Kings twice? Because I'm going to give them that first Wednesday game. That game was really good. It's just unfortunate that they weren't able to secure the win in regulation or at least hold the lead. And then this Wednesday, they shut them out. This team can play a complete 60 and play a complete defensive game. When it comes to the Chicago Blackhawks, their goaltending is okay. I mean, they have Peter Mrazek that's still there. He's been a journeyman. You have Soderblom, who's more of a younger guy. And, I don't know if he's going to get the start or not, but, you got a lot there that you can start to play with. But again, what do you really have with Chicago right now besides Bedard? I mean, yeah, they signed Tyler Bertuzzi. Who else? I mean, like, that's what I'm trying to say.
Yeah, they did promote Frank Nazar from the Rockford Ice Hogs, and now he's playing on the top line. So that's a prospect that they are very high in on for them. So that's another thing for the Chicago Blackhawks of just what they're trying to do, just continuing to build young players. They've tanked, they've sold at the deadline, so there's not much that they could sell. They can continue to sell even if they don't retain salary going in to the deadline for them. So that's another thing of how they'll have to navigate coming in later on as we approach closer. So the second end of the back-to-back for the Florida Panthers on this one against the New York Islanders, who will also be on the second end of a back-to-back. They will be in Tampa on Saturday night. Last time I checked, they were winning 3-0 against the Philadelphia Flyers, which it's funny. That was the first matchup between the Flyers and the Islanders since the Slipkov hit on Ryan Poehling, and he actually answered the bell against Scott Laughton. They dropped the gloves just less than 5 minutes into the game after Slipkov put a headshot on Poehling in their most recent matchup. But the Islanders, now winners of 6 in a row for them. They're hot right now. And it's funny, the averages still say worst power play unit in the NHL, worst PK unit. It's so crazy. Usually you have one or the other, but for the Islanders, it's both for them. Anthony Duclair has been back since December 24th for them. The one player to look at the deadline for them is Brock Nelson for them. Him, Bo Horvat, and Matthew Barzal have averaged over a point per game in their last 10 games for them. So this is a team that is on their way up. I don't know if they'll eventually make the playoffs. They're honestly, I'll be honest, this is the Eastern Conference team that when you look around games around the league, I try not to go to their games. There are other games that I want to go to when it comes to watching, and I try to not watch the New York Islanders because they're just boring to watch. Not gonna lie for them.
So that's the trap that the Panthers are going to have to avoid because, let's be honest, the Kings games were not that exciting. A lot of it was just, it was a lot of neutral zone play, a lot of defensive play, not a lot of chances. With the Islanders playing the way that they are right now, and Waz got them playing them right, they don't need special teams. They'll beat you 5-on-5, and they'll make sure that they, lock down defensively. So the Panthers really have to be on their toes and make sure that they know where Nelson is, they know where Barzal is, and their forwards that they're really hoping will be able to. Nelson staying with team, hopefully, or they'll see. But we'll just see what the Islanders can actually provide. Last year I had them in the playoffs. They did make it. They got kicked out in the first round by the Hurricanes, I believe. This year it's a little bit different story. I just think that they're skating in the mud a little bit. This is a little bit of a ascension for them. How about Florida just starts that descension back down into the Metro? So I think Florida probably takes both of these this weekend. If I had to predict, I will say the Islanders game will probably go to overtime or a shootout, though.
Yeah, and even though their averages are still towards dead last for them, during this 10-game stretch, their PK percentage has been the best. But hey, the season is not played in a 10-game sample, so it just goes to show how bad they were in the beginning of the season. But hey, I did watch their game against the Avalanche, like I mentioned earlier in the week for them, and Ilya Sorokin has just, hey, when you have a stud goaltender that you have there, actually a pretty good tandem. I mean, Varlamov was coached by Patrick Waugh in Colorado, so there is that familiarity. And we even saw last year how there were even stretches where Varlamov started over Sorokin. So we don't know who's going to be the starter on. We'll know on Saturday night when New York takes on Tampa Bay. So we'll know the trend of the back-to-back there for the New York Islanders when they do take on the Florida Panthers in Sunrise for them. And we'll be back with you guys on Monday to recap both those games between of the back-to-back, as the Panthers hope to finish this homestand strong, and then after that they'll go on a quick 2-game road trip right before one more home game, and then 4 Nations. It's almost here, my friend. So I'm starting to get that excitement, as I mentioned earlier in the week. But Nich, I want to thank you so much for joining me on this edition of the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast. Another successful Fairbanks Friday for you and I. Tell everybody where they can follow you online, my friend.
Armando, thanks again. For pulling me off the injured list again from last week. But happy to be here again. Everybody, you guys can follow me on X at Prudentia0. And if you guys are looking for those jerseys or for, the hats and everything with the Panthers logo, definitely give Florida Historian a follow as well. He's got a bunch of cool stuff.
Absolutely. Go check out his merch line there, and we'll put it in the show notes here on the YouTube and on podcast for sure. But Nich, thank you so much once again, and I will see you next week.
See you next week.
And if you like what you're hearing, please subscribe to the podcast to be notified every single time the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast jumps into your podcast feed. Don't forget to also subscribe to the other shows on the Locked On NHL network, including Locked On NHL, Locked On Fantasy Hockey with Flip Livingstone and Stu Roden, and Locked On NHL Prospects. Thank you once again for making the Locked On Florida Panthers podcast your first listen of the day. So I'm Armando Velez with Nich Fairbanks. And you've been listening to Locked On Florida Panthers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day.